Livingston Eagar from Macon, Georgia, originally. And I used to sound like Betsy Livingston Eagar from Macon, Georgia. But I've been gone a long time.
Let's talk about your World War II memories.
Okay. All right. I was born in 1941, which was in World War II during that time. My father was not in the military. I did not know anyone personally in the military at that time because I was so little. I had an uncle who was in the military, and my grandmother had been very worried about him. And she knew that in the Methodist Church, there was a way for her to ask for prayer for him if she sent in his name, and his name was Lemuel Mac Ray. And Lemuel was an unusual name at that time and probably still is. And my husband and I fairly recently were doing a hike at Lake Junaluska in North Carolina, which is a Methodist campground. And it's not just for camping, but they have big buildings and everything there. And we went into part of their chapel, and I found this book and looking around that were names of people whose family had sent in their names to be prayed for during World War II. And I thought, oh, I wonder if my grandmother did that, not knowing even that she'd ever done that. And so you could look it up by church. And she went to Centenary Methodist Church in Macon, Georgia. And I found that, and I found his name, Lemuel Mac Ray, that my grandmother had sent in. So that really was very meaningful to me. And then my only other real remembrances of World War II, I remember blackout curtains and blackout shades that, and I remember them on one particular window in our living room, living room. I had no idea why they were there because I was so little. Right. I remember my mother's red ration card, and that may have been for meat. I don't know what it was for, but I just remember my mother's red ration card. And I don't ever remember being afraid, worried, or anything about World War II because I was so small. And I was probably born in July, like 5 months
before.
Yeah, the big deal in Hawaii, right.
Oh, that's such an interesting story. And the fact that you were able to find your uncle in that book, I just find that really remarkable.
It was.
So let's move on to your story. So you have a very interesting story about how you served the country. So would you like to explain?
You mean about how I went with the Red Cross?
Yes, how you served in your own way with the Red Cross.
Yes. I graduated from college, and I went to Atlanta, which most people in Georgia would go to Atlanta when you were young. That was the big deal to do. And I did. And I was working for the Board of Pardons and Parole in the Capitol, which was an interesting job in a way, but it was also very boring. And I wanted to travel. I had never been out of the Southeast in my life. And so I thought, okay, I will apply to be a secretary in a consulate or an embassy. And I made an appointment to take the test for that. And I walked out of that building and I knew I had failed the shorthand test because I was not good at shorthand at all. I could type, but this was when shorthand was important. That was in 1964. And as I walked out of that building, I looked right across the street and it was an employment agency. And I walked just right into that employment agency and I said, I want to apply for a job with travel. And the lady at the desk just sort of looked at me strangely because women did not do that in 1964. And she said, well, let me let you talk to Mrs. So-and-so. And I don't have any idea who that lady was. I can still picture her. She looked like a grandmother. And she came out and I told her what I wanted. And she said, well, you need to talk to my friend Hazel Breland at the Red Cross. She said, because they send girls to Korea. And I thought, well, that's not exactly what I had in mind, but she made an appointment for me to go and talk to Hazel Breland, who I later became her secretary after I came back from Korea and was married. I was Hazel's secretary. But anyway, to go back to my appointment, after I had talked to Hazel Breland, I did not want to go anywhere else. she was a wonderful salesperson. But she was a wonderful person. And she could tell you exactly what you needed to know. And so I did apply to go. And I left in October of 64. And that's when I left for Korea.
So you went into training. Now you were what is commonly called a donut dolly.
Yes,
You-
but
you-
we were really supplemental recreational activities overseas. That was our official title of the program that we were under. So we went to Washington, D.C. for 2 weeks of training.
Okay.
And in my class, there were 12 girls, and they were from all over the United States. And that's when I found out I had a Southern accent. I had no idea.
Not everybody sounded that way, right?
Right. And I also had a Black roommate.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that was in 1964. That was very unusual. She had graduated from Spelman College in Atlanta. Her name was Cassie, and I loved her. And we became very close friends while we were in training. We were never stationed together. I was sorry about that. But she and I were in Atlanta for a little while after we were married, and I came back. But it was an eye-opening experience in many respects.
Interesting. So you had said something about the requirements for this position. You had to be college educated and
Yes.
over 21. Was that the
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, you had to have a college degree, over 21, and not be married.
Okay. So they trained you for a couple weeks,
Yes.
and then off you went after 2 weeks of prep, and they sent you all the way around the world.
Well, it was wonderful because we flew out of Washington first class.
Oh, nice.
Because we had to make a port call at Travis Air Force Base. And so the airlines did this for the Red Cross. They gave us first class seats, and we could not drink champagne that they gave us because we were in uniform. And so they gave a couple of the girls bottles and they put them in their carry-on. But we went into Travis Air Force Base, and we had a meal, and we could sleep a few hours, but we had to get up. And our flight left at like 2:00 in the morning. So as we were getting ready to get on the plane, we had to have shots because there was a requirement that after 1 a.m. on the day we were leaving, I don't know what kind of shot it was. I mean, I have no idea, but I just remember we were getting shots as we got on that plane. We were all in uniform. There were 12 Red Cross girls and 60 something GIs on that. Yeah, and we were seated right in the middle.
Oh my.
of that plane. And needless to say, we got no sleep all the way.
I was gonna say. So
No
you were in uniform. Now, can you describe what a uniform was? Because it wasn't a military uniform. What did it look like?
Yeah. Well, because it was October, it was fall, we were in more of our dress uniform, which was a kind of a blue skirt, kind of a denim blue skirt, a white blouse, and a red jacket. But when we got on the plane, we could change clothes. So we went to the bathroom and changed clothes so that we would not look like a bag of wrinkles when we got, just.
Yeah, good point. Because that was, I imagine, a long flight.
It was a very long flight. It stopped in somewhere, maybe Tokyo. Mm-hmm. I can't remember, but it was the airline that had a red tail. It's no longer in service.
TWA? Was it TWA?
Maybe. I don't know, but it was the airline that they had a red tail on the back of the plane. But we were not flown on military plane. It was,
it was a regular airliner. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And but then we got there with no sleep, and we were half dead.
Oh, I'm sure.
And we had to immediately go to a big luncheon that the Korean Red Cross did for us.
Oh, wow.
And we could barely keep our eyes open, but they were very lovely, and the food was wonderful.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you're over there, and now it's time for you to do your job, right?
Not yet. We had a week of training in Seoul.
Oh, okay. So you had more training.
Yeah, we stayed in Seoul for a week, and then we were all divided up, and the 12 of us went to different places. I went with 4 other girls, and we went to ASCOM, which was a big depot. We were between Incheon and Seoul.
Okay.
And it was called ASCOM.
Okay. And how did you live? Okay.
Where did you live?
How did you live? You were in a Quonset hut, you said?
Well, that time we were on a base. We were always on the base. We always lived on it. And at ASCOM, we were living in Quonset huts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 4 of you had a little hut to yourself? Was that how it worked?
Oh no.
Oh no.
It was there were more than the 5. I went with 4 other girls, so I was the 5th one. But because ASCOM was such a big base, we had probably 12 girls. That were there, and so, or maybe 14, I can't remember. But we were all in one long Quonset hut, but we each had our own room. And they told me that Quonset huts were named for the famous Chinese general Hut Quonset.
Oh, interesting.
And I believe that was a lie. I believe that they made it up.
They made it up.
I asked somebody, I said, why are these things called Quonset huts? And they said they're named for a famous Chinese general, Hut Quonset. Well, I believed that. That was not true, of course. I believed it first.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So you got your training, you got to your base, and then you started working. Yeah. So what was work for you?
Well, every day we would go to different places and do programming. We were not entertainers at all. Okay. I mean, I guess some of the girls could sing. I certainly could not, but that was the difference in the USO. The USO entertained because they had that ability, that talent. We took programs and donuts, I might add, to every base. And on a typical day, we might go to 3 or 4 different spots. And we would have a program, for instance, I think I had mentioned to you at one point about the Olympics, because the Olympics in Japan during the time that I was over there, and we would have our own Olympics, which were funny, silly games, because there's some things that women can do physically that men cannot because of the shape of our bodies. And that was really fun because they would just kill themselves trying to do it. Or we would do, we taught them to play pinochle and different things like that, because men enjoy anything that is competitive. So we would always try to have programs that were competitive. And sometimes we would go by deuce and a halves. Occasionally we would get to fly if it was really far. Or sometimes we went on Korean trains.
Oh, interesting. So you were flying on military planes then?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, there would be beavers or bird dogs. Beavers were a little bit bigger. Bird dogs were very small.
Oh,
beavers were, but I loved it when we got to go on helicopters.
Oh, interesting.
And that wasn't often, but sometimes we got to.
So you would start out each morning. Now, would you do the same activities at each stop? So if it was pinochle day, you would do pinochle at each stop? Okay.
Yes. And the program that you were doing that week, you would do everywhere for a week. Then the next week, it would be a different program because probably different girls were going back to the same places.
Oh, okay.
So the different program every week. And we were the creators of those programs.
Oh, so did you sit around and brainstorm and somebody come up with? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you would have an idea the first week. When it was your turn, you would have an idea. The second week, you would say how you wanted to do that idea. The third week, you would begin producing that idea. Then the fourth week, you would preview it, with your group. And then the fifth week, maybe you take it on the road.
Okay, so you each had a staggered, one of you was at each step at each time.
Yes.
Oh, very efficient of you.
And occasionally we would get an older, really good program that they had kept.
Oh, okay.
And give us a break. And we would, our program director, but it was just one of us that was a program director, because they had some girls are much better at directing things. And so each unit had a program director. And so we might use an old program to give us all a break.
Okay. did the men you were serving ever suggest programs?
They probably did, but I don't remember that.
Okay.
And tell us when they liked him and when they didn't. Occasionally one was so bad, we just have to take it off the road
Oh,
and something else.
yeah. So I
That was,
assume, like, the longer you did that, the better you got at reading or guessing what the guys would be interested in.
yes. Well, they were just interested in that we were there.
Oh, okay.
And they really were, because it just was such a break,
Mhm.
for them. Because they didn't see many Americans except each other.
And you said you mostly went to remote bases where they didn't get a chance to go on Liberty and stuff quite as often. So
Yeah.
so you really were like that ray of sunshine in their day.
But we hope so. Yeah. And there were some units that we really liked to go to more because they were more receptive.
Oh, okay.
And then there were other units, you just don't ever know why. They probably were glad we were there, but they were not particularly as receptive as some were. And sometimes we might go to bigger bases. I mean, we've done programs in a mess hall with 65 people,
Oh,
something like that. Or we might go to a very small Marine base and there would be 7. So it was always different.
what you personally, what size did you think was ideal? Like, did you like dealing with the small group of guys that you could really deal with them on a one-on-one basis, or did you kind of prefer the
Yeah, I did not care.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, some people might have. I enjoyed both because it was varied. If we'd had to go to all the same kind, I just liked them all.
Okay. So you had a lot of different experiences there.
Yeah.
So, now, did you get to travel? I mean, beyond going to the bases, did you get to travel and see Korea at all?
Yes, I got to go to Jeju Island, which is off the south tip, on vacation one long weekend with a group of friends, and we got to swim in the South China Sea. And there's a wonderful book about women divers on that island. I did not know about that. They were doing it even when we were there, that can hold their breath for quite a long while, and that's how they supported themselves and their families. They would dive and bring up abalone and all these different things that they could get under the sea, and they were trained. Their mothers would train them, their grandmothers would train them, and they could hold their breaths for a really long time. And I wish I could remember the name of that book, but the Sea Went Jeju or something like that. But Jeju was wonderful. It was a beautiful island, and I think it's still a resort island now. But in addition to there, I got to go to Hong Kong on leave and to Japan on leave.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So how long in total were you working for the Red Cross in Korea?
A year. You had to agree to go for a year.
Okay. So when your year was up, you were ready to move on, or
no,
you stayed? You would have stayed?
Well, I was ready to come home to see Bob, who we had gotten serious. I was very ready to come home to see him, of course. But if I had not met him, I would have wanted to go to Vietnam with the Red Cross.
Okay, so that kind of segues into, you had a great story involving Bob Hope and how he sort of inadvertently introduced you to your husband. So
yeah,
do tell that one. That was a good one.
One of the girls that I was programming with, we had been away and we had a flight. This was one time when we had a flight in, and we landed right after Bob Hope's troop had landed. And so there was no way for us to get to, our living quarters, because our driver couldn't come and get us because the roads were closed because of Bob Hope. And the girl I was with knew the major that was in charge of all the cars for Bob Hope. And so she found him and she said, "Do you have an empty car, next one?" He said, "Yeah, I've got one." And she said, "Well, can we use it and just ride in at the end of this?" And he said, "Yeah." So, we were at the end of Bob Hope's sort of parade. And the driver was not too thrilled with having two wrinkled, because we were wrinkled and being on a Red Cross girls. He was hoping for somebody better. And he said, "Where do you girls want to go?" And we just said, "Oh, just follow them. Just follow Bob Hope's group." And it went to what we called the main club. It was the main officers club. They were going there for dinner or lunch. I don't know. It was the middle of the day. And so we got out of the car and Carol said to me, "Let's go in there and see if we can see them." And I said, "That's a great idea." So we were sneaking down this sort of back hallway, and this lieutenant comes right around the corner to us and he said, "What are you girls doing?" And we said, "Well, we just wanted to see Bob Hope." And he said, "You can't come in here. Y'all need to leave right now." And that was my future husband, but I did not know that at the time. So he ran us off.
So obviously you had another opportunity to meet him that was maybe a little less confrontational.
Yeah. We really got together on Christmas Eve, I think. We were at the same function on Christmas Eve. But when Bob Hope was there, I will say it was freezing cold.
Oh.
And everybody stood outside to see him.
Wow.
But it was a great program. And there were people that nobody would know that were famous at that time, like Anna Maria Alberghetti and Juliette Prowse and all these people that used to be famous, 55 years ago.
So you went to Bob Hope's show then?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Froze to death.
Yeah.
It was
So you said about your husband, why you kind of picked him at the time, other than the other guys?
Oh, because he had a car. Yeah, really and true. He knows that. Because he was the club officer, he had a business degree. And so he ran a whole bunch of officers clubs. And he had a car because often after curfew, he had to take the entertainers home. Now, he didn't drive that car. He had a driver, even a Korean driver. Yeah. So when he asked me out, I thought, well, this is a good deal. This guy's got a car.
Little did you know.
Little did I know. 56 years later.
Yeah, there you go. So he was at the end of his service when you met him, because you said that he actually.
Let me think. He was sort of in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Because it was in December. I had only been there 3 months, and he'd probably been there 6 or more months.
Okay.
Yeah, when I met him. But shortly after I met him, he was at ASCOM, as was I. But then I was transferred and north to Camp Red Cloud, and we only saw each other on the weekends until he came home in May, and I did not come home until October.
Oh. And you said he was also from Georgia?
No, he was from
Alabama. Okay. So not
Roll Tide.
So let's see. So you had also mentioned a really interesting story about the monsoons.
Oh yes, that was when I was at Camp Red Cloud. No, it was not. I'm sorry, Camp St. Barbara, because I was at ASCOM and then Red Cloud and St. Barbara. They moved us a lot. I never quite understood why, unless we had to be very flexible. That was, you could not be over 25 to go on this program.
Interesting.
Because they said after 25, you were not as flexible. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but we couldn't be any older than that. And you are much more flexible when you're young, you don't worry about anything. But at Camp St. Barbara, I was there in the summer. And sometimes there's quite a lot of rain in Korea in the summer. And where we were living was not in a Quonset hut at that time. We were living with probably some secretaries, Army secretaries, and I can't remember what other women were in. We always lived just with women, but it made a square, and we had an outdoor patio in the middle of that square. Well, it rained so much that all the plumbing flooded, and so to be able to take a shower, we would just go out on the patio. and take a shower because that was the only way we could get one. And then we would brush our teeth with ginger ale.
Oh, wow.
But fortunately, the pumps were fixed pretty soon, but the pumps flooded, and that's why we didn't have run. Yeah.
Because how would you be able to wash and care for your uniforms without running water? Or did you just collect rainwater?
I don't even remember that. We never did our own washing. We always, every day you would just put your dirty clothes in a dirty clothes bag. And after about 3 or 4 days, somebody would come and get them. And then a couple of days later, they would reappear all nice and clean.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
It was wonderful. It was hard to come home to have to take care of myself. Because I mean, that was something that they did for us because we really did not have a lot of time to do that. Plus, they were not like laundromats like now.
Okay.
They were just not. And they probably beaten on a river somewhere.
You didn't know that they just came back clean and that was enough for you.
I know it. Yeah.
So that was, how you took care of wash and stuff. So what about food? You talked about eating at the bases. What was the food like? Were you eating American food? Were you eating anything unusual? Or?
Well, if you ate at the bases, it was totally American food.
Okay.
And like at Camp St. Barbara, you always sat at the same table. It was a general's mess because we had a general at St. Barbara. And I ate with the pilots. I don't know why I did. I don't know why I didn't eat with the doctors or somebody else, but I ate with the pilots at every meal. And I would walk, they would see me coming toward the table and somebody would just kick out my chair. They wouldn't get up and pull it out. They just kick it out.
So they separated all the women and each one sat at a different table?
I don't know. I can't remember that. I just, there was no other, at St. Barbara, we only had 5 women, period, up there. So now there may have been nurses, I don't remember them, or there may have been secretaries, but I mean, there were just 5 Red Cross girls up there because it was a much smaller unit. And I don't think they would ever send anybody brand new to a small unit. Smaller units were harder.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Because we lived in a fishbowl.
Oh.
I mean, we really did, because the men always thought they knew what was going on, with us, but they, of course, didn't. But rumors,
of course,
who you were dating, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it was never bad. But we did always, if you were eating in the mess with guys at lunch, sometimes at lunch we would eat in a mess hall. Or if you were eating an officer's mess or something, it was always American food. But we did like to, if we could, go to Seoul, and then we would always, we did not eat off the economy. I mean, on the economy. We would not eat on the economy because we get sick. If you could not shell it or peel it, we were told not to eat it.
Okay.
And we probably had diarrhea once a month anyway, from water or whatever else. But there were places that we knew in Seoul that it was okay to eat.
Okay. What was Seoul like at the time?
One paved road.
Really? Wow.
That's it. Yeah. There was one paved road out of Seoul. Now there may have been a few more in there, and probably in downtown Seoul. Yeah, there were probably some, but out of Seoul there was like a paved road. And it was nothing like it is now.
Because it's such a cosmopolitan place now.
Yeah, yes. And it certainly was.
Have you been back since?
No, but my son has.
Oh, okay.
He and his wife were on a trip somewhere, and they stopped and spent the night or two in Seoul because they wanted to see where their mama and daddy had been.
Yeah.
But I said, well, that's not where we had been.
No, that might have physically been, but that wasn't it.
Yeah. No, I take that back. There probably were a few paved roads, but there were not many.
Yeah. So wow, that's been very interesting to see.
Yeah.
To see how they were living. Because that wasn't that horribly long after the Korean War. So
I was there in 1964, and the Korean War was over sometime, I think, in the late 1950s.
So did you see any remnants of the war?
That's a good question. I may have and not even realized it.
Okay.
But we were supposed to keep a packed bag at all times in case there was any incurgents, or how do you say that word? Insurgents.
Oh, wow.
So if they had to evacuate us right away,
Oh, wow.
of course we didn't do that, but we were supposed to.
Yeah. You were young. That was too much hassle, right?
Well, we were young. We didn't worry about stuff.
Yeah.
I sat down and go, oh.
So did you have a normal circle that you made through the bases? Like you went to this one and this one, or did they move you? How did that work? As far
You mean
as
what?
what you visited when? Did you have a route that you took, or did
There was
you just
a schedule every week.
okay?
And our director, we had a director, and then we had a program director. And the director probably talked at least every week to a major or colonel or somebody, to say, where is it okay? If they weren't on maneuvers, or something like that, if they were going to be there. And she made up our schedule for where we were going to go. And then we had Korean drivers who spoke no English, who took us, to where we were going to go every day.
Did you learn any rudimentary Korean to communicate with them, or
Well, a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, I don't remember hardly any anymore.
Mhm.
I just don't, because I haven't used it. And I used this, I used it right now. I can't think of even how to say hello. Anya Hashimnika. That's it. Anya Hashimnika. And often when I have met a Korean, I'll say that, and they'll go, how do you know that?
Yeah. So somebody told them where they were supposed to take you, and you all just
Yeah.
plowed into the car.
Yeah. Well, the truck.
Oh, the truck. Okay.
Always a truck.
Oh, okay. So you weren't riding in, other than when you were with your future husband, you weren't riding in cars.
Yeah, and that was rare, that I would even ride in a car with him.
Okay.
Because there weren't that many places to go.
Oh, well, that's true.
There really wasn't.
Yeah. So what did you do then on your time off? I mean, other than the times when you had trips that you could take, but your downtime, what did you do just on a day-to-day basis?
We went to parties.
Oh.
And they would tell us that the first couple of months that you're there, you'll probably lose 5 or 10 pounds. Because if you were new, you were invited to all of the parties.
Oh.
And that's what people did on the base.
Okay.
There would be stuff going on, on the base. And because we were the only girls there, they would invite us. And we'd be out late, and then we'd have to get up early.
Oh.
And a lot of times, you would, if you had lunch, it was running, or if you were eating with a bunch of guys, they'd want to talk. And so therefore you didn't get much time to eat, while
Sure.
And food at that time didn't mean that much to young girls, and I probably did, right after I got there, lose some weight.
Just because you didn't have time to eat, you were so busy.
Right. And we were physically active too.
Okay. Were a lot of your programs more physical programs like that? Like
No, they weren't, because of where we had to do them, like in mess halls.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. So there was no way for us to do real physical stuff.
Okay. So the games you were talking about were kind of low-key games, and
yeah. But we tried to divide them into groups.
Mhm.
And so they can compete against each other, which they just love.
That's funny. What else was it? Oh, like a question just floated through my head. Oh, you had also mentioned that you only worked with enlisted troops.
Yes. Well, we saw the officers,
Mhm.
but our programs were only with the EM, as we call them, enlisted men.
Okay.
And they ask us, please do not date them because that's who you're working with.
Okay.
And we would see the same ones, often.
Mhm. Sure.
But we did, of course, we dated,
Mhm.
but they asked us, please only date officers.
Okay.
And so that's mainly what we did.
So was there some other type of recreation entertainment for officers, or were they sort of just left on their own? They had to find their own entertainment.
Well, there were officers clubs, and then there
Oh,
were also EM clubs, and there were, parties,
okay.
in both of those. And occasionally, very occasionally, we would go to an EM club for, something, a function, but not normally.
So you were dealing with the enlisted now. So did you end up? You said you saw the same people over and over. Did people end up being friends of yours? Did you stay in touch with any of those guys?
Well, like at ASCOM, I only was there 5 months.
Yeah.
And then I went to Camp St. Barbara, and I was there like 4 months.
Hmm.
And then I finished my tour at St. Barbara. And so, you didn't have a whole lot of time. There was one particular guy that I sort of stayed in contact with because he married one of our Red Cross girls.
Oh,
But we've lost contact because I think they got a divorce. So I'm not sure that. But I am close in contact with 2 of the girls that were in my class.
oh, okay.
Another one that I was very close with, I know it has passed on. I mean, she's dead. But one is in Atlanta, and I'm north of Atlanta. And then another one is in Melbourne, Florida.
Okay.
And we are still in contact with each
Oh,
other.
nice. Very nice. Do you see the one that's right there in Atlanta? Or you just kind of
Occasionally, she met her husband there in Korea, and my friend in Melbourne, Florida, met her husband there.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess that was a common occurrence.
Very common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you know what happened? So there were 5 of you traveling together. So those were the ones. Was it always the same 5 the whole tour, or
Well,
when they moved you, did you switch up?
Well, at ASCOM there were 5. There were 12. I'm sorry, from my class there were 5 in our unit of 12. We would call units, and those 5. When I went to Red Cloud, I'm not sure any of them came with me. They went to other places when that unit, was dispersed, and maybe some of them stayed there in that same unit. And then when I went to St. Barbara, I know I went by myself. I was that was a very small unit of only 5, which was fine. I mean, I didn't care. We had to be flexible. That was another thing. If you were not flexible, you could not do that job because you never knew from one day to the next or 1 minute to the next what was going to change.
I'm surprised they didn't at least send a pair of you to that. They sent you alone.
Well, but I would meet those other girls when I got there.
Oh, okay. So you would be working with more than one when you got there.
Yeah.
You would travel alone. Okay.
No, I mean, well, I don't know how I got up there. The motor pool,
Yeah.
give me a ride up there.
Yeah.
But no, we never worked alone ever.
Okay.
No.
So that would be difficult to come up with those without help.
And we would go out to do programs. There were always 2 of us together, and sometimes we had to go to Seoul on a supply run to pick up all the supplies for the donuts.
Okay.
And I remember laughing, thinking my mother, who was so Southern, would just die because I had a guard that went with us, and I had a driver. My driver was Black, my guard was a Korean, and here was this blonde American girl sitting between them, and we went to Seoul on the travel run, but we had to have a guard because we went by Slicky Boy corners. And Slicky Boys were the ones that could steal very easily. And the truck had to slow down so much when we went through Slicky Boy corners because of the curves that sometimes guys would, Korean poor people, and I don't blame them, would jump onto the back of the truck and throw off our supplies. And that's why we had to have a guard. And he had a gun, that was very highly visible, the whole time we were gone.
Oh, wow.
But I just remember I never told my mother about
I didn't tell her that part. How did your parents feel when you came home one day and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm headed off to Korea with the Red Cross"?
My parents were divorced, so my dad didn't know, but my mom was none too happy.
Oh.
I was 23 at that time, so
yeah, you were.
I was a college graduate and I was already working. So, there wasn't a whole lot she could do about it. She could say what she wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously you wrote letters to her. Did you call her or anything? Or did you talk to her much that year you were gone?
Yeah, occasionally. It was very difficult to make phone calls then. They're not like now.
Right.
And I remember the time she told me I was losing my Southern accent. And I told the girls in my unit what she said, though they just fell over laughing. They said, there's no way that's happening. Because I was working with girls from California, in Minnesota. And because in my class of 12, when we were in Washington, we were from all over the United States. So that was really fun. I was really glad to meet people like that.
Interesting. Now, once you got back, was your mother proud of your work? Or did she just kind of, "Oh, I'm so glad you're back," and move on?
She probably was. My mother was not a demonstrative person, in saying things like that. I mean, she just did not. But I knew she was very glad I was home. I don't know whether she was proud that I did that. Maybe she was, but she never let on. But she was just very relieved that I was home.
I'm sure. So you came back. So after your year tour of duty, you decided to hang up your Red Cross uniform and go back to civilian life.
Well, when I came home in October, and then Bob and I got engaged shortly after I came home, and we got married in February. And we moved to Atlanta, where I had lived before, but he had a job there. And I can't even remember how I interviewed, but I went to work as the secretary for Hazel Breland, who hired me to go to Korea. And I worked for the Red Cross until I was pregnant with our first child. So, and I got to interview some of the girls that were going to Korea.
That was going to be my next question. Were you then kind of the experienced person helping to bring in a new class?
Well, Hazel would let me answer their questions.
Okay.
If they had some about somebody that actually been there. And one interesting thing, while I was in Korea, before I went to Korea, I was living in an apartment with 3 other girls in Atlanta. When I had been in Korea about 3 months, one of my roommates came to Korea as a Red Cross girl because she got interested in it.
Oh, okay.
I went, and then she came, but we were never stationed together.
You never saw each other in passing or anything. You just knew she was there.
I knew she was there. I don't even think I saw her over there. But another girl came from my hometown whose mother had taught me swimming and had been my Girl Scout leader.
Oh, neat.
And I did work with that girl.
That's a small world.
For short. There were a lot of Southern girls. In fact, there were probably, yes, and it was because of Hazel Breland. She was a wonderful recruiter.
Okay.
I mean, she put all the other areas to shame. And
she was that good a salesperson.
Yeah, she was.
Interesting. So how, so you said if you had stayed in, you would probably gone to Vietnam. That was another Okay. So the women you were helping to recruit were headed to Vietnam.
Most of them. There were still some in, of course, going to Korea, because
Oh,
Korea, that program kept on for a while.
okay.
And if I had gone to Vietnam after that, I would have wanted to go to hospital recreation in Europe.
Ah,
So I
okay.
sort of had planned,
Yeah.
to do it. But Bob got in the way.
You know, threw your plans all out of kilter there.
Yeah, but I have been to a lot of places because of him.
Oh,
So that was good.
so you still were able to travel even
Oh
after
yeah.
the Red Cross. They just, you didn't have to work quite so hard when you traveled the next time. Huh?
Yes, I have, because it's been on mission trips, most of them.
Oh, okay.
Traveled with women. There were women's groups that we went to a lot of Muslim countries. And
Interesting.
yeah, probably I've been to 30 something countries now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know it. And I miss traveling a lot. But I'm getting to the point that I get tired.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as easy to travel.
So did any of your children serve or do anything like you and your husband?
No. Now they've been to Europe, like maybe my son one summer for a month, worked at a mission in Europe, and then he traveled all over Europe. He did that. And my daughter went on a mission trip to India, and I think hated every second of it. But they have not traveled out of the country. My son has with his wife a little bit, but not very much.
But they didn't do so. Let's backtrack a moment. How did your husband end up in the military?
He went to the University of Alabama and took ROTC.
Okay, so he was a ROTC graduate.
Yeah, and as soon as he graduated, and 6 months after he graduated, he was sent to Korea.
Okay.
And was glad he wasn't sent to Vietnam, because it was hot. And that was a blessing. Yeah.
Yes. So neither of you encouraged your children to follow your footsteps that way.
Well, I think I probably encouraged them a lot to travel, but when I graduated from, when I finished my graduate degree, I had an undergraduate degree, and went back to school. And when I finished that degree, my daughter finished college at the same time. And so she and I, as graduation presents ourselves, went to England and Scotland together. And that was really fun. And I left her there. I came home and I left her there for another week to travel. But see, she is now 50. And she, at that time, was 22. So how long ago was that? It was safe.
Right.
And she stayed a week. Her grandparents were having fits, but I didn't feel bad about leaving her, because she was a person and wasn't going to do something stupid. Yeah. And so she traveled by herself for a week after that.
Wow.
So I'm glad that she had that experience, and I'm glad my son had that experience one summer.
Interesting. Very interesting. You had a very interesting life.
Thank you. I think so.
So anything else you want to add to the story for?
I am glad and I am sad that they don't have that program anymore, because we don't have that many men in Korea, and there's no need in Vietnam. But it was, I think every girl that ever went through that program is grateful for the experience. It was a absolutely wonderful experience. And I don't think my children really believe I did it.
Do you have pictures?
Some, but they don't care. Really seeing them. They've probably seen them, but it's like, that's another person that they really didn't know. Okay. Because you didn't know your parents when they were young.
Right.
And they've just never particularly seemed too interested in that. And it's amazing that there are a lot of people that aren't, when they find out, what I did. It's like they can't get their mind around it. because nobody does that anymore.
Oh, so they've
I mean,
completely disbanded that program with the Red Cross?
Yeah. Yeah, supplemental recreational activities overseas, to my knowledge, is no more. But that was a wonderful 2 weeks in Washington because I had never been to Washington.
Okay.
And it was much safer and smaller and easier to get around in 1963.
Oh, sure.
And I think that was, no, 64. I'm sorry, 64. And I remember one night we had gone to Georgetown. One of the ladies that were our leaders, there were two that trained us. One was named Louise, and I forget the other one's name. Anyway, they took us out to eat, and we were walking through Georgetown, and she stopped us. And she said, just a minute, girl. She said, do you see who that is right there getting out of that car? That's Averill Harriman. Well, I don't know how many people know Averill Harriman, who that is, but we were walking right by his house, and we said, hello, Mr. Harriman. And he just said, hello, girls, and went on in his house. But that was pretty cool. And then also, one of the girls in my group went out to eat one night, just the two of us, because sometimes we would do that. And we went to this restaurant, and we were seated just, how sometimes there are tables for two and they're just so close together.
Yeah, that you may as well be in the same.
Yeah. And there were two guys sitting right by us. Well, we talked to them, and had a fun time. Well, the next day, there was a message for me. They said, there's somebody downstairs that wants to talk to Betsy Livingston. So I went down there, and it was one of those guys. He was a doctor, and he was on his way to Vietnam. And so he and I dated a little bit in Washington, and we saw the mamas and the papas.
Oh, neat.
Before they were the mamas and the papas. Yeah, I mean, they had that, they weren't famous.
Yeah.
And it's some basement nightclub in Washington, and I'll never forget that.
Oh, that is so cool.
I know. And then he came through Korea to see me once, and I went to Hong Kong and met him on leave. And that is, after that was over, because I knew that I liked Bob way more. So, and he turned out to be an allergy doctor in South Carolina.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But we met some really, really interesting, nice people that I've lost contact with, and I'm sorry about that, because they were really interesting.
Yeah, life gets in the way sometimes, right?
Yeah, life is what happens when you have other plans.
Any other cool stories you can think of that you'd like to share?
I'm sure after we hang up, I'll think of something. But like I said, I am sorry that they don't have that anymore. I'm not sure how safe girls would be now.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
We were very safe. The men were extraordinarily protective of us.
Really?
They were extraordinarily protective of us, yes. And I really appreciate that. I never knew of a girl being physically attacked. Now, that happened in Vietnam. I know that happened. And a drunk guy murdered in Vietnam. And that was very awful.
Yeah. Did that happen while you were serving?
No, it was much later. Much later. And drugs were not a problem. Now, I think drugs, in fact, some guys were acting kind of strange one day, and I asked somebody, I said, what's going on with them? And somebody said, they didn't just say drugs, but they said something. And I thought, why are they doing that? I mean, it was just so foreign, to me. But drugs were not a problem. Alcohol was a problem with the officers.
Really?
Oh, yeah, especially with officers.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because you could go to the officers club and drink, and it was like almost cost nothing, And we never paid for a drink. Some guy, if we drank, some guy always. Yeah.
But you couldn't. You said you couldn't drink when you were in uniform.
No, or on duty. No, we could not. But I didn't drink I can't drink. I mean, I'll go to sleep and fall on my face. I just can't drink. Yeah.
That's interesting.
But I cannot think of, I remember crying when I left.
Really?
I was another girl was leaving with me, Jane. I remember her first name. She and I both had our tour up at the same time. And we were at Camp St. Barbara. And they were helicoptering us to Seoul to get our flight home.
Mhm.
And we were just a mess.
Oh, wow.
Because we knew we would never see these people again. We would never get to do this again. We were just a mess. We just cried all the way to Seoul.
Yeah, it was kind of closing that chapter.
Yeah, yeah. And you knew it was, because
Yeah.
I wasn't in Vietnam, but I was glad and excited to come home to see Bob, of course. My family sort of, but I'd love to know what happened to her. Name was Jane Keel. That's right. And I would love to know what happened to her, but we flew out together.
Wow. And then you flew back by a commercial flight, just like you did.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really do not know how I came home. It may have been a commercial. No, I don't think it was a military flight, because most only military things I did was in Korea. And we had the assimilated rank of captain for flying. So that we would have better seats or better accommodations if we stayed somewhere.
Okay.
But we didn't flaunt that. I mean, we didn't flaunt that. But I remember flying into Washington State. I guess we flew into Travis. I don't know. And I spent the night there, and then I was home. And I had reentry problems. I really did.
Really?
Yes, because plastic straws had been invented. I'd never seen that.
Oh, wow.
Styrofoam cups had been invented. I had never seen that. And there were 2 or 3 other things that in that year that I was gone.
Wow.
I know it I really had a reentry. And they told us, they said, you will probably have some reentry problems. And I'm thinking, I didn't even know what this cup was, what it was made out of, or a plastic straw. Yeah, I mean, it was really funny. And I doubt you remember Whip and Chill, but that was a thing almost like whipped cream.
Oh.
And that had been invented. I'd never seen that.
Huh.
And it was
A
just
lot of stuff to be invented in 1 year.
Yeah. And other things had come about that, if you're gone, you just don't know.
Right.
And my brother had graduated, my oldest brother had graduated from college. I mean, no, he hadn't. He'd started college. I'm sorry. He started college. That was it, because he was 5 years younger than me. So there was some changes, that you come back and it's like re-entry, and they said, you're going to have this. They were right.
So it took a little while to kind of get back into.
It did.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. And it took a little while to get back your full Southern accent.
Well, once Bob and I were married, I lost a lot of it because we traveled a lot. I mean, where we live now is our 10th move. So, I've lived in different places.
Okay.
So, I mean, I still have it, but it is not as thick.
No. It's just kind of
if I went back to, it would be.
Interesting. Very interesting story.
Thank you.
Any other comments you'd like to share? Any other memories?
It upsets me sometimes when people say bad things about the Red Cross, because I'm sure the Red Cross has made mistakes. But if we did not have the Red Cross, it would be a sad day.
Yeah.
When we have fires in our town, the Red Cross are there. I mean, it's even in the paper that the Red Cross, put up this family in something hotel, because they're there immediately. And like I said, I am sure that they've made mistakes. And this is what gets us all, the Red Cross girls. They said that the Red Cross sold donuts. The Red Cross never actually did, except at one point, at one place during World War II, the English were selling donuts. And they asked the Red Cross to please do the same thing, because if they were giving them free,
Oh,
they could not sell them.
okay.
So, as I understand it, they actually did, but it was at the request,
Okay.
and it did not last long. But we, of course, never did. We had donut machines that were probably from the flood. They were so antiquated. but our Korean bakers knew how to work them, and they made donuts every Monday. And by Friday, I'm sure they were horrible, but the guys didn't care. They ate them. You know?
Now, did you feel at the time, because the donut dollies, I believe that name came about in World War I, if I remember correctly. So did you feel that you were kind of carrying on this long tradition, or was it just your personal adventure?
No, I don't think any of us felt like we were carrying. Somebody may have felt like they were carrying on a tradition. I don't think we did. I think a lot of us went into it thinking, boy, this is going to be a great adventure for us. And once we got involved in it, we realized we were not there for us.
Mm-hmm. That you were really providing an important service.
Yes, we really finally, and it didn't take long to realize that yes, it was a great adventure for us, but we were there to serve these guys. Mm-hmm. And I'm forever grateful that we could do that, because sometimes you would go in and they were not doing well that particular day. I mean, something might have happened, or some of these missile sites or compounds, they were very isolated. They were very isolated, and they didn't get to come in very often at all. So by the time we left, after like an hour or so, you could see a change in how they were. And that's what we were there for. Mm-hmm. You know, if we could give them a little taste of home, you know, for an hour, mm-hmm. you know, that was the best. I hate saying that was the best we could do, but that was the best we could do, you know, right at that time. But I'm grateful that we were able to do that.
And it must have been very rewarding to see that, how much of a difference you made in such a short time.
Yeah. Yeah, it really was. And there were chapels that they could go to. There were ministers that I think were very insightful and helpful, you know, mm-hmm. to a lot of them. There were nurses that were there, and the USO was there. There was a library on a lot of bases that were there. So yeah, I wouldn't take anything for that year.
Thank you for being willing to share your story.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Important to get that story out there, and so everybody knows about this really interesting part of history.
Yeah, and I'm thankful to the Red Cross. I really am.